But he didn't tell me what it was.
And you wouldn't have laughed. I told you. You would have heard it. All right, Joyce has been making reproduction clothing for years. She was involved in the Claudmore Farm over in Virginia, which has since closed. And she played a strong role in the restoration of the Riversdale, which is in Riverdale, Maryland. One of the Calvert family, the proprietors of Maryland, one of their houses. There's a very interesting book by the man's wife, who was a Belgian immigrant, and she wrote, "What you think a plantation wife had it easy? Read Mistress of Riverdale. It's very much worth it." Wendy and Brian are active reenactors at Fort McHenry and love to model the clothes that, well, I just found out Brian makes his own stuff. I'm not sure about Wendy.
Some of it.
Some of it. And Joyce here still makes lots and lots of reproduction clothing for people that represent various periods. So I'm going to sit down and shut up and turn it over to them.
Okay. All right. Well, this the topic was fashion in the time of the Revolution, but I think we have to go back a little bit to the beginning of this, because what I'm going to be talking about is the politics of fashion and the Revolution. Because the Revolution was really a change in attitude, supposedly, to all of the simplicity and everything in reaction to the king and all of the finery and everything that they associated with the British aristocracy. Now, the colonies got most of their information and their clothing, actually, fabric at least, from Great Britain. The French were the fashion setters earlier in the century. So everything was fine. They were bringing all this stuff in, and the colonies were just making it their own. So what you would have then would be something like this. Is something that would have been worn in the 1760s through 1770. This style is it's a French style because it has all of this extra fabric in the back, and then it has a stomacher. This would have been day wear for a lady. Fancy, yes, but still, it's just to wear to the day. But this is the style for the French and some of the English, but you also had the English style, which was a closed back. Still has a stomacher, has robings, is what these things call, and the stomacher is that thing in the front. But the difference was that all of that fabric was then pleated into the back. So this is a simple gown from 1760. By 1770s, Wendy is going to be showing you how the styles have changed. Also, we're going to be seeing what the general population would wear. By the way, this has got a lot messed up in the transit, but this is the kind of wig that you might have found being worn by that fancy lady. And this was not English. This was worn here in America. But this is my reproduction of it. So what did the general population of the women wear? You start with, I'm going to go here. You start with a shift. Now I'm going to have Brian come out and show you what he does for the men, but I couldn't have Wendy show you because it's a little. So
good time now, Joyce?
No, not yet.
Okay.
All right. This is your shift, linen, and it's also can function as your bedwear, your nightgown. So on top of that, and this is general, everybody, and no colors. It's always the white. So on top of that, this is a very small set, but you would have stays. So you would go, this was made, believe me, this actually was worn by a lady that I made clothes for, and she could close it. But if you closed it, you were being straight-laced. You could, you could have some, give back. But if you closed it, you were straight-laced. And then some of them were up in laced in front, too, so you could do it front or back. So this goes on, it was fully boned, so it gave you correct posture. And you started with these when you were a child. They were called posture trainers. And even little boys, if you were in the upper classes, would be wearing something like that. So you got your shift, you got that. Now you're going to put something on top of it. You could have a short gown. Somebody who could try that on. The short gown was another very easy to put on kind of thing. And this would be for the person who was a laborer, somebody who worked in the kitchen and whatever, but it could also be just the sort of thing that you might have put on when you were at home. Instead of stays when you're at home, you might have had something called jumps. Now these would have been soft and everything, but you could put them on, lace them up. It was also warm. In the wintertime, you put some of that on, but you weren't always straight-laced, but it was more comfortable. But this is something that you could wear. Now, once you got that on, you could put on a petticoat.
That's a petticoat?
That's a petticoat. It had openings at the sides, on either side, and that's where you could get your pockets. Pockets were yours. What was that? Oh, those are your garters. They were in your pockets. So you had stockings, of course, but you would carry almost everything. You didn't have a purse. When you get into the Regency period, you had reticules, which were ones that you could carry on your wrist. But this is what you carried, just about everything you wanted, and also your valuables. If you didn't have any other, you kept them with you. So letters, anything like that. Another type of garment was called a bedgown. This is primarily the English kind of thing that was through most of the country and the colonies and everything. But then there was an introduction to this short gown that comes in about the 1760s, and it's brought in from Germany and the countries over there where they were wearing it. In other words, the fashions were really imported from someplace else, but adopted by the colonists. Something else you might wear, a little bit more, would be a jacket. Now it's fitted. You have to have stays to wear something like this. Those other ones you can kind of wrap it around and everything. And with either that or the short gown, probably not the jacket so much, you would have an apron. Now Wendy is going to show you what an apron and scarf are like. So she has those on and you will be able to see those. You had not you had an under petticoat. Now getting this really layers and layers and layers. An under petticoat because you wanted to give volume to your thing. So you put on your all these things. You put this on before you put your petticoat on. So on top of your head, which you should have your head covered all the time, that was what you were supposed to do, you would have a variety of caps. This is one that's a style that was generally used in the middle colonies, and this was the sort of thing that was sort of, it's the mob cap kind of thing is what they called it. And so you also had another kind that, this is a little cotton one for a child, but it had a drawstring in the back and it fitted around. So these are the kinds of things. There were other styles, lappets and things like that, but you always had to have your cap. and you had something, a scarf and your apron. This is something that a little girl would wear. I brought this because somebody had said that there was going to be a girl here today who had been here 5 years ago, and she's now 11, so she was little. This is called a frock. It would be worn, all kids, boys and girls, just started out as something like a shift, a chemisey kind of thing. And then they're breeched, and the boys get to wear breeches, and then the little girls get to wear a frock. But because kids like got dressed, take off all their clothes, hers would be tied up in back or laced. So when she's older, maybe 10, 12, like that, then she would get to wear something that closed in front. So that's just the kind of thing. With that, you would put on the same thing that I'm telling you about, an apron, except hers would be a pinner apron. And this would come up and you would put pins here and then you tie it around. Then you'd have a scarf and then you'd have the cap. These are ones that I used to make for the Claude-Moore Colonial Farm, just for visitors who wanted to buy their machine-sewn cotton. But it's a general idea. And the little girls, when they would get dressed and they'd look in the mirror, they were transformed. I mean, literally, it was just so much fun to see how they did that. So that's the basic kind of thing. If you had a gown like that one over there, you had to have the things that would hold it out.
What?
These are called pocket hoops. Pocket hoops. And you had a pocket that you could reach under there, but it gave you the volume that you needed to hold all of this out. Because when you looked at it, you were displaying the whole thing. So, we will get to what Wendy is wearing when she comes in.
Yes, exactly. So I'm being a little bit careful here because I've got these nice little leather shoes with buckles. But as Joyce mentioned, underneath I have all of those things that we talked about, except for the pocket hoops. But here, let's take a look around here. Did you do this roll, Joyce? Did you have that? Okay. So you'll notice this roll back here gives me a little form in back, a little fullness. This cap isn't very meager. I'm a Republican woman of the new republic to be, and working hard for my country and showing what it's like to get down in the plows and the fields. So I have my workday dress is here. This is the apron that would go around. I wanted to show you that. You see that how this robe goes around this petticoat and the apron that
Now
matches.
she has her scarf in there. Modest.
And it's
Modest. And it's laced over a stomacher.
Mhm.
So, but can you turn around so she can see the back? All right. In this case, this is en furrow is what they called it. It goes down into the skirt itself. So part of it, the front of it is separate, but the back of it is like the sack, that you called it, the French version, that's been pleated down, but it still goes into the skirt in one piece. This is one of the things we have to keep in mind with the revolution, is that it took a long time. It started really in the 1760s with all of the acts that the British were putting on that were going to tax or do things that the colonists didn't like. In the Britons, after the war of the French and Indian War, the English decided that, hey, we fought that war for you, you should be helping us to pay for it. So they start passing these different kinds of import taxes that all these people who were dressing fine and eating and having tea and just everything was brought over that was one of the luxury sorts of things. So once that starts, then you see the building up to the revolution. and it isn't finished until 1783. So by that time, you've got from this gown through Wendy to what you're going to see at the end of the Revolution is there an evolution in fashion as well. And did you have
Yes,
anything
any
else that you wanted to say? Any questions?
Any questions?
So what she is demonstrating
Yes,
is
we have a question there. Yeah.
I do. I noticed on one of the gowns, it looked like, or the petticoat was shorter? Or no?
this petticoat is usually a little shorter than the gown over it, but I'm not sure which
What
one.
about, how about this one? How about the first one there?
Oh,
Does this look like
oh,
the-
this is just simply because it's on the hanger.
Oh, okay.
So that's
Do you
all.
see,
Right,
do you see
right.
how that is shorter?
No, it isn't because it's hanging from the hanger here.
Oh,
Right.
oh,
Yeah,
So
so,
it's in
Yeah.
line on the
There we go, Dan.
oh, so
version
that
I'm
does go all the way
wearing.
down.
Yeah,
that's the
I'm
whole
kind of
thing.
leaning over
Oh,
also.
okay. I'm thinking, I've never seen,
One that short.
yeah.
If you look at French paintings,
Oh, okay.
some of those were above the ankle.
Oh, okay. All right.
Scandalous, right,
Alright.
right.
I got a question.
So,
Here's a question, Becky.
Oh, a question.
I got
Yes,
a question, which you turned around and you had that little bump.
Yes, I
Right.
did.
How did they do that?
Well,
Was that
that's what
sewn
I was
into the
showing you.
dress?
This is called a bum roll.
Okay.
Right there. And it tied
Okay.
on around, and then your gown went over
Okay,
it,
so
and it
that's how it's
was
stuck.
to emphasize that way that back went out.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
So. What was that for? What was it for? It's fashion. What's it
Yes.
for? It's fashion.
So this would come back.
I mean, you had something you wanted to show off. And so not just a rear, but
So this would start to come back, I believe, Joyce, in full-fledged, kind of like the straight line in front, full-fledged kind of bum roll and back during the 1870s with the bustles and
right.
back.
Yeah. So
Um,
everything is, same thing as every 50 years or so. So, what Wendy is showing you is what the virtuous Republican lady, because starting in the 1760s, there were a reaction to having all of these taxes putting in. So they started boycotts. We're not going to buy these things. We are going to be, teaching the British, that we don't want to do that stuff. Well, there were associations called continental associations to kind of reinforce that. And they wrote down in books, we still have these things where they write them down. So-and-so is buying English goods. They bought this, they did this, and look at these ladies they're wearing these fancy clothes, and they were making this something that was not their idea of what we should be. And this builds through the revolution, because the Republic is supposed to be doing away with all of that kind of fancy stuff, and the king and all of society sorts of things. And there are classes. There were classes of people from the lowest to the highest, the gentry kind of people. And so this is it's kind of a tension between knowing what they liked, people liked, and what they would be allowed, sort of, by social pressure to wear. So the simple gown, the linen gown that she's wearing, she's the kind of person that they would like. There are reports of people who were coming from other countries, and they were commenting on the ladies in their short gowns and petticoats with an apron, and they looked like somebody, a lower class person in England kind of thing. That's what they represented. I mean, that's what they looked like. But they could have been the lady of the house, because that's what she was wearing. So this was a tension, as I said, between what they really would have liked to have done and what they did, and it became even more of a problem when you start getting all of the colonists coming together in Philadelphia, because Charleston they had all these gentlemen who were coming in there and the ladies. And, they had all these fancy things. The people from New England, John Adams, I had some quotes here from him. I need to put my glasses on, I can hold it here. He needed to inculcate the citizenry with proper Republican dress and taste. We must change our palates. In other words, no more tea, no more of that imported stuff. Our taste in dress, furniture, and then he went on and on. Sacrifice some of our appetites. Silks and velvets must be dispensed with. Such gewgaws were mere trifles in the contest for liberty. Mm-hmm. Now, John Adams was kind of a grouchy man, but and he doubted, though, that people possessed virtue enough to even make a small sacrifice. He said the men must give up their fancy clothes and be mere husbandmen, merchants, and soldiers. So that's the kind of thing that the people who like to get dressed up were up against. The only thing that they could, when they could put on their fancy clothes, apparently, it was remarked that Sunday was the day when they all went to church, and the ladies would pull out all their ruffles and their feathers and their whatever, and then they were really dressed. That or funerals. But otherwise, no, you're supposed to be, very, very Republican. So, yes, sir.
Could you get dressed by yourself?
Yes and no. Wendy got dressed, but she had front-lacing stays. If you didn't have front-lacing stays, it was much more difficult. Another thing which I didn't mention is Wendy had on shoes. You put on your shoes before you put on your stays because you couldn't bend down to put your that kind of thing. You learn how to, the way you got dressed. Right. But generally there were always somebody to help you, maybe a maiden aunt who lives with you, or your children or something, if you were getting dressed. So. All right, now, any other questions about what a regular person the lady would wear? Let's have the gentleman.
Taxation is theft.
Actually, I would say, sir, that that's a much fancier waistcoat than you might have worn. And look at that ruffled shirt. Oh, my goodness. Right. Well, at least your breeches are all right. Those are good linen. Right. And you got regular shoes. But the buckles, maybe you were a little bit too fancy with those, sir. Just brass would have done.
I like these buttons.
Oh, you are not virtuous. You do not have the spirit of liberty.
I also feel undressed.
The reason he feels undressed is that he is without a coat, because your waistcoat was just undressed. It was not. You went around the house maybe in a waistcoat, but you didn't go out without your coat or a jacket. They had that sort of thing. But basically, what the man would wear: shirt. It's the same thing as a shift. He doesn't have to have a corset on. He's got his, he's a nice, he's got his shirt on. Over that, he has a waistcoat. Turn around. Which laces up the back and adjusts in case you lose weight or you gain weight or you have famine and you can't eat and everything. Okay. And then you've got your breeches. Now, the breeches are something that you can turn around now, right? That you are going to be particularly conscious of, because the breeches, notice how tight they are at the thigh, and the stockings, you had to show your leg, and this was a fashionable thing if you were a fop, as they were called, somebody who was really interested in making a very good impression. And you might even have pieces of cork if you had skinny legs, because you wanted to have this nice looking outfit. Fortunately, Brian is a great one to make clothes for, because he's just the right shape. So this is your basic gentleman's outfit. No underwear.
Oh, no one? How high are the stockings? They said 2
Joyce up there?
It comes back here, I have them folded down to about here. It's the knee band that really holds them up.
Right, and then you can have garters too.
That's what I was gonna ask, how you actually hold those up.
Yeah,
So-
this knee band is pretty tight.
So you can get away without garters?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, but actually, this is the kind of thing that, I use these with mine. Some of the ladies would just take ribbon and tie it around and do it. Or they would tie it around and then roll it the way they used to do silk stockings for the ladies. But these are the kinds of things, and you might have somebody in your family with your tape loom making this tape. And then you just put a buckle on it and you put it around to hold them up.
Now, I noticed when he turned around that it looks like you have suspenders, is that correct?
Yes, I have linen, basically strips of linen sewn up.
Okay, got it.
It's just a straight rectangle, or straight strip,
That you
and they
crisscross?
cross in the back.
Okay.
So it's button to button and then button to button.
And it
Okay.
gives you, fit is such an important thing to the well-dressed person in the 18th century. Posture, as I was telling you about with the stays and things, with a gentleman, it's almost like the ballet kind of thing, where you have your shoulders back, and of course, a lot of their dances were of that sort of thing. So, this is your basic thing. As I said, there's no underwear. Now, there are people like Jefferson, as an older man, because he was cold, he had drawers that he made, and they have some of them at Maja. But for the average person, no, your shirt was long enough to come down, and you just pulled it between your legs and tucked in the breeches.
Okay.
So that became that. And that's also the beginning of the expression, airing your dirty linen.
How they're much lower.
Oh, okay.
Which I was surprised to learn.
All right. He's got on these suspenders now because he hasn't been able to get used to the idea that your breeches hung on your hips. It was of a lower thing, and because he does a lot of the Regency period where they started to move up, and then the waistcoat gets shorter and so on. That's the other thing that is a difference is in the time period, because in the French and Indian War, when you might have been wearing, this would be 1756, 1760s, where you would have been wearing that kind of gown and so on. The gentlemen were wearing very full skirted coats, and everything was much longer. Their waistcoat was longer. By now, the waistcoat is coming up to here, and by 1800, the waistcoat is here, and then it's here. So this is all for this part of this evolution kind of thing. Do you have any more questions for the gentleman?
I just have a general question. Sewing machines weren't invented yet? I thought
No, everything was done by hand. Everything, all your sheets, everything, because they didn't have that. They started to get machine things like stockings, knitting mills would be done. And they actually did knitted breeches too, but this is all basically after the Revolution, is when you have the Industrial Revolution and things coming over from England. And what happened when you are in a place where the British are barricading, blockading, nothing can get through. So those people who really did want to buy the British stuff, with the blockade of the ports, nothing's coming in. So then what do? They start to develop their own manufacturers, if they can. So they have these ladies' organizations, let's all get together and spin, and then we're going to make things, and we're going to do this. And so all of this stuff, they were, potters are trying to develop the thing. They're trying to replace all of the stuff that they were getting much cheaper from England. And then what happens after the war? The ports open up again, and all of that industry just, and so then they have to start building again. And by the 1820s, you've got Henry Clay talking about the American system. We've got to build up our manufacturing and make it here. Nothing is changed. I mean, this is the sort of thing that you hear all the time, as far as that. So, is Wendy ready?
I don't know. a lot easier.
Yes, right. Okay, yes, sir.
So for the spinning, sorry, for the knitted drawers, would they be like knitted flat and then seamed, or would they be knitted in the round?
They did have things that were developed to knit in the round, but a lot of the stuff was flat knitted.
Ah, I
And
see.
then they would sew it up.
Oh,
So stockings, for instance, you might find the seam up the back, that kind of thing. Oh, she's coming. There
Oh,
she's
good.
coming.
Very good.
I have
I
another
have a,
question.
sir, I have a
Brian?
This way?
Now, what if you, what if you were someone that was of more modest means? What would your attire be if
Same.
you,
The
Which
same
is-
thing
which is
except
simpler.
just
when
simpler?
I commented, that was a fancy,
Okay,
but his breeches were nice linen, coarse linen.
My next provide is silk.
okay,
Probably it would be linen or
okay.
something.
So you
like
would
that.
still go out in the field and things like that, with the waistcoat and all that on?
Yeah, but if you are a farmer and there's nobody around,
Yeah.
you might even just go out in your shirt or a
Okay.
smock. And that's actually one of the things that they talk about, the development of another thing we're gonna be talking about, the hunting shirt, is that the Brits had something they called a smock, which was just like a shirt that wasn't open in the front, it just went over, and you could wear that over your clothes, so you didn't get messed up.
Oh, okay.
You know, and so, or if you were just working in the field, you might have, just the basic. You're not where anybody else is.
Right,
But before you go out in public, you have a waistcoat. It could be just a linen plain waistcoat.
Okay.
But that was, you had to have that covered because this was still your undergarments.
okay, alrighty, thank you.
Yes,
So, where are his pockets?
I have two pockets here.
They're just small.
Yeah, I do not like personally pockets in the pants.
breeches.
And breeches. This pair of breeches does not have side pockets, but many often did.
Right,
Just
most
perfect.
most of the breeches that I make are, I made these, but they didn't have that's maybe kind of just the working man thing. The ones with pockets would be something that you would have a place to carry things. But men did have pockets, big pockets in their coats, which you will see.
And then I have pockets in the.
Yeah, and these, and so,
Very big.
but you did not want to have something that was going to break the line and have lumpy things. Because this is a nice fit.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, very
Fit.
nice,
Right.
very handsome.
Did you have another something over here?
I'm remembering memories coming up of a movie about the Jamestown colony and when they first met, the Indians first met them, that the Indians were very clean. They took baths, what do you call it, sweat lodges, because they didn't want the animals to smell them when they were hunting them, and that the colonists were very smelly. They didn't wash very often. Is that true?
Pretty much
Just like
so. I
coffee.
mean, although you can, if you talk to people who do some camping, they actually can have a nice sponge bath kind of thing with a little bit of water. Remember, you have to cut that water from someplace and bring, so it's a laborious kind of thing to do anything, to keep it. They did wash linen, at least, and that's one of the reasons why they used linen, and so you had maybe a rotation of shifts or shirts, the rest of the stuff, and that absorbed a lot of the sweat or what have you. But it just depends on what your circumstances and how clean you can be.
So they had soap, like.
Oh, yeah, you could make soap.
Yeah.
So, if you wanted to import some of those very nice, kind from France, that was not allowed, so you said, you gotta make some soap someplace, so they did that. Any others?
I'm just
All
thinking,
right.
all that clothing, layers and layers of clothing.
In the heat.
In the heat.
In the heat, right.
I know.
Right.
That fashion is more important than comfort.
Now, one thing I
Well,
wanted to,
yeah, but that might be comfort, but, telling you, somebody around you might think,
So you
No,
can
but-
he looks good, but he doesn't smell good.
one thing I will point out, Brian is wearing his Regency shirt. because
Oh,
the
yes.
cuffs
Yes.
are, this is another way you can tell the change in style, because the cuff on the Rev War type shirt is only about an inch and a half. It's only about like that.
My Regency shirt, I have a Regency shirt with a short cuff, but it's
Yeah, that's all right. So I just wanted to point that out for them, not to.
Yeah.
All right, so we have the next model
Wait,
here.
one more
Oh,
question.
another question.
Where's the pocket watch? I see him in the movies, you know what I mean?
Okay, it's on the waistband. There is a
Actually,
place.
it's in my back in the other room.
Okay, all right.
I have one. It's,
But if you were dressed like that, where would you put your pocket?
so typically on the trousers, there is
Oh,
a
okay.
slot right there on the waistband,
Gotcha.
and then a fob would hang down. So
Right.
you,
You see the chain and all, that's what I was.
Yeah, so that would be,
Nice pants have one.
no, I didn't put
Okay.
any, there's a work pants.
Yeah.
No, you didn't put your watch in your work pants.
We just work till sundown.
Yeah, we're cobbling this together because I have been trying to get the breeches that would go with the fancier uniform waistcoat done, and we're having trouble with fitting because it has to fit. And we have, if that's enough questions.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, yeah, any other questions?
Okay, so,
Go this way.
Come down.
no, no, that was, that shift, I mean, that shift is your underwear.
And it goes, and they pull it up in front.
And we're trying carefully to come here.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, now, this would be that lady who's going to church. All right, this is also the bone roll, but this one, this is the later time period. This is getting toward the end of the Revolution and 1780s, and she has on a gown that is separated totally from the skirt part. The other one that she had on, it comes down and then goes into it. This is on that. It is closed in front. It doesn't have a stomacher, and this is the style by the 1780s. It's coming in during the Revolution, and by the 80s and the end of the Revolution, this would be what you would be seeing. This could be her best gown. This could be just her everyday gown, depending on what station she was. And by the 1780s, you find that people are slipping back into buying the stuff that is coming in from England because the war is over and the boycott is having a hard time keeping people focused on that. So Wendy's got on her fancy hat with the feathers, and now she's got on the apron, but she's got a silk petticoat, right? And she's still got her shoes, but they could be silk. I mean, they could be silk.
Yeah.
Right, they could
Fabric,
be anything like
yes.
that.
And
But this,
maybe a fancier buckle, perhaps.
right, yes, right. So,
I should have had a fancier buckle, but.
yes,
Now, the cream,
yes,
is that a petticoat?
yes,
So, and the other is just attached and drapes down?
right.
Okay, all right, okay.
Now, one of the things that you can do with something like this, about this time they had a fashion, and this was, oh, look at that. You might do this with tapes that you would pull up and give it.
Like a bridal gown.
Yeah,
Right.
I was in my wedding gown, but yeah.
And this was known as a polonaise. And supposedly from the partition of Poland or something like that. But that's generally the kind of thing that you could have. You could have the tapes up. And also when you were dancing,
Yes.
balls and
yes.
things like that.
Okay, beautiful.
So you could do that with those two, but you had the hoops out there to hold them up. Questions? Is Brian ready?
We'll find out.
Send him in.
Sit down a minute.
And this would have been the everyday work gown, 1760. And here is what I'm talking about with taking that, the one where it's all of that fabric and you're pinning it down. That's the English style, also versus what they call the sacks, or a la française. So,
Approximately how many yards of fabric?
I know. Or something like one of the sacks with all of that back stuff, and a petticoat. You probably have enough to cover a sofa.
Wow.
So you're done. Fortunately, a lot of that fabric was very lightweight silk. So,
Okay.
but some of the brocades were a lot heavier. Is Brian about ready? 1 minute. Okay. All right. Brian is going to be coming out in. He's have what he wore before, but he is going to join the revolution. And what he's going to wear is something that was developed a long time before the revolution by the people who, the huntsmen, the guys who are out on the frontier, all that kind of thing. And you will recognize him. Napoleon. All right, what he did would be the same sort of thing that any average guy who was joining up to fight the British, they had to have a uniform. So they didn't have many uniforms available, first of all, and they wanted something that would get the people out right on the fields early, So Washington came up with the idea that this is something that is very easy to make. Well, I'm not sure about that, but at least it's something that that people would know about because it's a hunting shirt, hunting frock. And people who lived out on the frontiers knew about that. The Indians had something like this, which the frontiersmen had adapted, and it was very comfortable. You could pull the cape up and protect yourself. You do all sorts of things. So Washington decided that to get these guys out on the field right away, we needed something to put them in to identify them as our soldiers. It was also supposed to be representing this same kind of they were fierce hunters. They were all this sort of things. It was to give them respect and so on. The Brits never felt very much about the militias. When Washington wanted to commission and during the French and Indian War, and he had his uniform and all this Brit stuff, and they just didn't think that the colonies were the same level, and they probably weren't in terms of training and everything like that, because they were soldiers, they were a military. The colonies had militias. We have militias here. I dressed the 1st Virginia regiment, which is not a militia, but it is a regiment now. But there were a number of these small groups to be kind of home guards. And you probably had one here. I'm not familiar with this area, but I know that in Harford County there was one that one of my ancestors was part of. But at any rate, this represented what their army was in many ways until they started getting uniforms. However, there were quotes about this. Some of the ladies thought these were so handsome and everything, and it made them look so fierce and what have you. But there was a Frenchman who said, "Well, yeah, they're quite nice, but they're also very lightweight, and there's a lot more freedom of movement." So it was comfortable, basically, instead of the uniform. So, and it was a leveling thing because everybody had a hunting shirt. But wait, not everybody had that kind of hunting shirt. They had the hunting shirts that had half the fringe that has on it. Now, Brian can tell you about making this. He actually made this.
Oh, wow.
There are very few original ones, but Neil Hurst down in Williamsburg was able to find one that is documented. It is in Germany, and he went over there and took photographs and everything, and it's, making there are changes to the ones that I've been making. Instead of having the pleats go up to here just like that, it has 2 layers. That may just be because, guess what? This is an officer. Now, Brian, tell about your,
Sure.
because that's not the only thing that's an officer's.
Yeah, so this was typical what an officer was worn in terms of hunting shirts. They apparently had more fringe than the regular enlisted. But in addition to that, the silk sash and also quite often a sword carried designated your rank. Didn't have epaulets with the hunting shirts, and because of most of the combatants early on in the war were wearing these. It was harder to distinguish between ranks if you didn't notice some of the little intricacies of that. Washington did order officers to have different colored ribbons on their hats to be able to distinguish rank. It's a very quick way to white for captains, green for lieutenants. This reproduction of this is the photo of the one that's in the museum in Brunswick, Germany, rediscovered by the Americans last year. And Neil Hurst published this paper in January, so it took me 2 months to make this from his drawing.
And fringing all
photos.
of that is not easy.
Yeah,
Plating is worse.
Yeah, there's this like 30-page paper he wrote. I only printed a couple out, but it really describes this. The history of this particular reproduction of the shirt was collected by German Captain Johann Ruff while escorting recruits to refill the ranks of German soldiers fighting with the British during the War of American Independence. Ruff collected the shirt between 1777 and 1779, and this was confirmed by a letter from Brunswick's court counselor, and they described this shirt and a hat that was part of the collection. The hat's been long since lost. And then so the note that came with this shirt, the shirt and cap above are included only so that His Highness may graciously see what kind of clothing the highest officers currently wear in America. And so the sleeves actually have 20 pleats. I can only get 18. So it's so difficult. And I'm not a tailor. So, but most of the shirts that were out of hundreds of thousands of hunting shirts, probably more than hundreds of thousands, that were worn throughout the conflict, there are about 6 left in museums. There are only 2 shirts that are known to have been worn during the war. The rest are probably suspected they're worn because they matched it. There's lots of examples of illustrations and descriptions, so we know what they look like. And then the second one is this, which was rediscovered in Germany, and the other one is a shirt in George Washington headquarters in New York in their collection. And both of those are captain's shirts, and both of those have lots of extra fringe on them. So all of the most of the shirts will be trimmed and fringed on the edges, so that down the front, round, and then the cape. And that's about it.
And none of that extra stuff on
Yeah,
the
the zigzags and all this is just
any of that
embellishment.
stuff.
There's still the different schools of thought on what the fringe why it's there, what uses it has. Some people say it wicks water. Some say it just adds more weight. It seems to, in my opinion, that at least with locating the second shirt, that it was more decoration, and then the more decoration you had, the higher your status was. And so there's a great painting in the rotunda of the Capitol in Washington of the surrender of at Saratoga, and there's the 2 generals. There's who was the general?
Burgoyne and Scott.
And he's handing the sword off, but more generals is a man standing there, surrounded by other officers, witnessing this, merely a colonel, and he's wearing his hunting outfit. You know, he's, if you look at the painting with that in mind, it's like, well, he's more, you know.
What's he doing there? But he is.
No, he's
No, I mean, that's what you would think. Why is this guy?
Yeah, but he is wearing the hunting shirt. Actually, he had hunting pants. He had the same linen pants as well.
Right, yeah.
And he is standing there in this outfit with equal importance. The outfit was equally important to all the officers' regimental coats. You know, and so it was accepted that the status, and then I mean, the painting was done, and then
It was Daniel Morgan, wasn't
Morgan,
it?
yeah, it was Morgan.
He was a
colonel.
frontiersman anyway.
So he basically helped elevate the hunting shirt in the annals of history, in that the British were not sure that every time they saw a hunting shirt, is this an expert marksman? You know, because they had that reputation. A lot of the backcountry
The sharpshooters.
Especially Morgan's men, the riflemen. And so it was just a symbol, as you said before, a symbol of independence. But it really readily became the uniform of the American Army in 74, 75, 76, 75, 76. Because you can wear it in hot weather, and if you got cold, you still wear it, but you have other clothes underneath it. So but you still see that same garment. And so it was, when I started, so I primarily do War of 1812 at Fort McHenry, and when we started preparing for the American 250th, because there was a Revolutionary War fort there before McHenry was built, we started researching and putting together uniforms and equipment in support of the semi-quincentennial. And I learned a lot. I didn't know that the hunting shirt was such an important part of building the Army in 1776. And when Washington was, so you have the Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Marylanders moving up.
That's what I was just going to say.
You have to support the siege of Boston. Then all these New Englanders were like, what is this? This is cool. You know, they were called, one's description, they were looked like assassins, because they had their muskets, they had scalping knives, tomahawks, and they were just moving up in this Native American looking uniform, and quickly adopted by the troops up there, and Washington suddenly sending out samples and having them tens of thousands made for his troops, because they just couldn't outfit them in the normal uniform. And one of the problems was Washington wrote that having disparate clothing, you had some troops in very fine clothing, some in rags, some none at all, was detrimental to morale. And so if you could get everybody in hunting shirts, because that was really the only economical way to be able to outfit equally, then that was the solution, and that's what they did initially.
Well, once they get the help from the French, there's a little bit more pressure on them to introduce more the military look that we think of as the soldiers kinds of things, at least for the officers, and to put them in the ranks. But this is what got them in the field right away, and then it continued on as an identity that they had, and this whole military discipline and that kind of thing, was very important as far as fighting was concerned. So having something that was, when he's talking about them coming up from Virginia and from the South, they had different colors of these.
Yeah,
they weren't just this one thing. You had groups of militias where there'd be one person who would say, okay, well, wealthy person, I'm going to outfit this outfit. And so they all came up from all these places, and as Brian says, it was a revolution for the people in Philadelphia to see this kind of thing. And they were just, the ladies really thought it was great. And also, those guys that I was telling about, the Continental Association, they started wearing them.
It is a symbol of rebellion against England. It
Yes.
became the main symbol.
A friend of mine who's been researching the Maryland troops and the Southern campaigns in 1780 and 81 has found out they were being far better supplied than we thought. They were getting issued hunting shirts and woolen regimental coats. Nathaniel Greene would have them wear their hunting shirts in the summer months, and then in the winter months they traded them in, put them in storage, and got their woolen regimental coats for the wool. So there it is.
So this has 42 feet of fringe. I was forced to measure it as I was getting close. There are 3-inch strips, folded in half, and then sewn about a quarter inch, or whip stitch on. But then there's only like maybe less than a quarter inch of unpulled fringe, and so that, you know, 2 3/4 inches, you know, had to be pulled. But I was afraid it was running out because I only had a couple yards of this stuff, and so I had to measure it to make sure I had about 2 yards left over of fringe.
But as fancy as this is, with all of the fringe, this one does not have the, what did you, tufts.
It
That
originally did. Yeah.
have even more decoration.
I can't figure out how to make them.
So we're gonna figure out what those tufts look like, because there was the indication that they were there, but they were no longer.
Yeah, the one in the museum in Germany, there are no tufts, but there's little marks where they were. The one in New York does have them, but the pictures are very hard to see how they were. They're not going to let us take it apart.
The one thing you didn't mention is that you've got to start.
Oh yeah, I had switched to my black neck stock, which was more of a military attire versus the white for civilian use. So every painting and illustration you'll see of soldiers, most always have a black
stock. Sometimes leather, sometimes.
Yeah, horsehair.
What do you have hanging over your shoulder?
Oh, this is just a hunting pouch or a rifleman's pouch. It is another commonly seen item when the backcountry men came in with their you have musket balls here, powder horn, and
Just all the things you would need.
Yeah.
When we're talking about as being a shirt, you don't see it there, but that actually is open down the front.
yeah,
It's
this
just
is
wrapped.
a split shirt. So there were two ways of making these. You would either have seams down the sides,
Like a regular shirt.
yeah, or in this case, it was folded over and then just stitched on the shoulders. And so there's tiny little shoulder gusset triangles here, and then gussets under the arms. I mean, basically it's a shirt.
Right,
It's just-
but it's a different way of cutting them,
Yeah.
and it also, in making these things, I've discovered how much fabric it saves, which is one of the things why they did it as a wraparound. Because you had a length, if it was woven to 36 inches,
That's what you got for the
well, you didn't, you had it 30 inches, and then the rest of it was for
They were
for
very
fringe.
short.
They were short. And so, I don't like that cut because it's not as, it will wear, maybe that's why they didn't last as long. There are weak points. With the way that they had shirts done, regular shirts, that could last for 20 years. But with a seam at the shoulder and then a slit down here that you had to fill in, that one actually has a tear where they put the gusset in. So from a seamstress point of view, I can understand why they did something. They were saving fabric, but it was a quick thing.
Yeah, and Hearst mentions in his write-up that this particular shirt has wear around the waist from either a belt or a sash, and an officer would probably be wearing one of both.
Okay, so you got another little bit of a change, and we'll bring Wendy back in.
Oh, could I ask one question?
Sure.
Can you extend your arm?
I mean, I'm 100%.
So there
flexible.
isn't actually a set-in sleeve there, that's just.
No, it
You can
is.
see
There's a gusset,
right there.
and that's,
Oh.
yeah, right.
So the split on the side is about 11 inches,
Okay.
Right.
and then the shirt is pleated. I don't know if you can see it. It's got
On
some
here.
pieces
Yes,
on here.
okay,
It's
yes.
To
attached.
give fullness.
Okay.
This shirt is kind of unique in that the pleats ended here at the elbow, and then it kind of is like a ruffle, like a full here. A lot of the hunting shirts don't have that extra. They're more.
Well, they have it, but it's not gathered to there.
Yeah.
What they've done when they just leave the pleats, instead of stopping it like that, they taper the pleat in so that they're actually pulling all the fabric tight. One of the things that I think, and as this is just, my thought, but it would be, if you had a full shirt, that's gonna get in the way of your gun, isn't it?
Well, you don't want bagginess here.
Right.
Because you're doing all
So
sorts of
that's
stuff.
why you want to have
Yeah.
something tight.
Loading a musket, it
We have a
requires a lot of
question.
stuff down here.
A question over here.
So when you made that shirt, did you do it all by hand or did you? You did?
Yeah, no, I didn't want to get the sewing machine out. It was laziness. I had to go down to the basement, get the sewing machine out of, we hadn't used it for a while. So, and a lot of folks were making them by hand because it's that were originally done. And what better way to learn a couple different stitches. So basically it's a running back stitch and a whip stitch is the only thing that's holding this thing together. And linen thread, the linen thread is kind of a heavy cord run through beeswax. So that increases stiffness. Plus when it's ironed or heated, the beeswax, once the stitch is in, kind of helps to hold it all.
But you did use back stitches too.
But yeah.
Right, so
yeah.
the back stitch is actually a very secure
Oh, yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
right?
I don't know how long it's gonna last, but we'll
No,
we'll see.
All right, so he's gonna go change, and Wendy was supposed to, you have another question?
It's a typical tricorn, I guess you would call it. There was this style with a shorter front, and then there was the one there's a big triangle shape where the equal folds on the front and sides. This one doesn't have that. It has a shorter front.
Just for officers though, or?
No. It's basically this one's made of. I think this is made of animal fur.
Is that beaver?
Yeah, this is beaver hack. It's like
The dirty billies?
paid beaver prices.
Yeah.
They're harder to find anything but felt nowadays. It's just a typical civilian hat of the era. If I were to be in a regimental, for example, I could wear this, or I could have it if it was artillery, gold trim,
Right.
metallic tassels, and all sorts of other stuff.
Things that you could put on to indicate that,
Yeah.
it's just like he was talking about, instead of a rosette up there, there was.
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's why I got to put a white one on here to.
Yeah, one thing that I didn't talk about was hair. And another thing that the officers would, they were, everybody had the long hair. But the upper classes were used to having powdered wigs and hair. And so Brian was telling me a story about having the officers with the wind blowing and the powder was coming out. They had done away with that at the beginning because everything was supposed to be equal and so on. And there's a letter from one of the delegates from South Carolina whose son was in the Army. And he was saying that he really should have that powder in his hair so that he could tell. They just could not get away from having class things, even in there. And with the military, in some cases, it was a necessity to have discipline. And this was one way to make sure that you knew who was. It wasn't just this guy beside you. It was an officer.
The officers are setting an example.
Right.
And embellishing the regular uniform, and they're paying for this themselves anyway.
Silver epaulets and
and so it's a lot of extra to steady the men and to impress.
And I can certainly understand if when the French come over to help, that there were a lot of jealous Americans who would really like to have some of that bling too.
They're always been over the top.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing.
So, More questions, but he's got to do one more thing before we quit.
Yeah, are you gonna do Wendy again, or?
Well, Wendy took her time.
I didn't, sorry.
Okay.
I'm back
Well,
in
next,
my
give me 5 minutes.
Okay, all right, he's just gonna, but, the finale was supposed to be Wendy coming back out in her silks and Brian coming back after the war, dressed like a civilian, but, with the, he'll have some of the same cut on. But he also then will be, he's out here in his waistcoat, remember? And what did I tell you about being undressed if you didn't have, so he's going to wear a frock coat. So, and cane, and his, and all those accoutrements that that were finery and accessories. So, if you have any more questions while we're here, do you want to see anything?
One more.
Yes.
The Ken Burns show is on, the
Yes.
American Revolution. How does your clothes compare with what we're seeing in that? Because now I'm going to be watching them a lot more. And it's nothing.
Okay.
Because
Am
the
I
women
going-
followed the
yeah.
troops and all like that from what their husbands and
Yes.
sons and everything, and they carried a bucket, whatever. But how does their clothes compare with?
That's what I was telling you about this. The gown doesn't give you the freedom of movement so much. Even that one over there, there's a pumpkin colored one, that's a simple one, or Wendy's, as a short gown or the bedgown. But the construction of them is exactly what they were done.
Okay.
I do everything for the museums, everything's hand sewn. If it's for reenactors, and so I don't have to charge them as much, everything that shows is hand sewn. So what I do for the regiments, I do 2 regiments for the small clothes. I won't do uniforms because this is what we're talking about. Everything on that uniform means something. And I don't want to have to get into that. I know civilian, I know the other, I can make the small clothes, that's the breeches and then the shirt and waistcoat. But those are all that, everything that is, the public would see is hand done. So,
What
yeah.
type of needles were you using to make these?
Well, it depends on what the fabric is. If you're doing something that's a lot heavier, you gotta have a needle that you can get through some of it. For some of the fine things, for the ladies' clothing, like what Wendy had. Do you want to bring those things out?
Yeah,
Just
I
put
can
them-
do that. Yeah,
Put
why
them
don't I
here
do
so you
that?
can see, and you can come up and actually look through any of this stuff.
He was saying you use linen cord.
Yeah, linen thread, you can get
A
linen
linen
thread.
thread.
Right, you can get different grades of linen thread too. And a lot of this stuff, people would know because everybody made things.
Right.
The women were making these things or had dressmakers to do them. And so, it wasn't as though you were starting out with nothing. So,
So they would have had to have had strong needles.
well, strong needles, but that's pins and needles were imported from England. And the nursery rhyme, I give my love a packet of pins, because that's the way true love begins. Well, you would look for those things, or don't lose them.
Right.
And believe me, if I drop a needle, not for the exact reason, but if I make sure that if I'm working anywhere on a carpet, I find it before I go on, because otherwise you could have problems. But any of that kind of stuff would have been found in a lady's sewing box. Your silk thread, you can have silk thread for this too. So,
Did you want to take a closer look at this? Yeah, people are welcome to take a closer look. See, wonderful thing about the silk on, especially warm days like today, it's very, very light.
Oh.
And that's really nice. Actually, I'll bring out the other gown, you'll see the difference in the weight of the fabric.
There, and this is the way this is done. When you put them together, what you're seeing is the stitching of how it's all.
And this was all hand.
No, the interior, some of the interior seams are done, but if you look at the skirt, at the inside of the petticoat or this, that would be what machine sewn. Everything else, all of this is this. This just comes together. And it was held together in front with pins. Ladies' clothing, laced, seldom buttoned, and generally was put together with pins. Part of that is simply because of pregnancy. And changes in shape and things like that. But there were some that did have, well, they had the lacings, but the ones that were buttoned, men's clothing buttoned. Women's clothing, sometimes, but
So
not.
here you can feel the weight
So if anybody wants to come
of
up,
that
that's
little
fine.
Yeah, I wanna take just a break here. Oh, yeah, sorry, these are held again by pins and tied up to the
Yes.
thing. You're welcome, but.
Are you teaching any of this art to anybody else?
Nobody wants to do it.
Oh, right.
There are more people now who are getting into this, is what Ross was talking about, that there are more ladies who are making their gowns, and there are patterns and things, and so they're learning the stitches because they are different stitches than
Yes.
for, there's some of them are the same.
Yes.
But, I had the luxury, I'm blessed that I had the contacts with people in museums who allowed me to actually look at the things, and then there was one particular collector whose clothing is now in Williamsburg in their collection. She is in a nursing home, and she had a stroke. But she had this fabulous collection, not just the Revoir, it went back into the 16th century up through, she taught at George Washington University and the Smithsonian. And she would just bring the things over, and all that stuff that's down there in Williamsburg was on my dining room table. I could look through and grab, and so I don't use patterns, I make it to fit the person, which is what they did in the 18th century and on a little bit more. You did draping. So what you did was have the gown made to shape the person. You just put it up there, you pin it, and you and then you stitch it. You put the wrap it around here, you sew the sleeve up. Everything was made to fit the person. So you don't need patterns when you know what the styles were. Now, when you run into trouble in any of this stuff, in that time period, his styles change. So that's the fun part of looking at these gowns and things, because the seamstress is trying to figure it out. How can I make this way? And I have one that was, Mary Deering is the lady's name, who is now in nursing home. But she had one gown that's in Williamsburg that it was rare, and it demonstrated the transition and so on, how things changed from one style to another. And I had it there at home, and I made a craft pattern, I made the patterns and everything, and then one of the sutlers who did fabrics had that fabric printed. It's a printed cotton. And I could get into another whole thing about cottons and imports of fabrics of different kinds and when. But this one was a special one, and it was reproduced. So I thought, okay. I had a customer who bought the fabric, and I said, I know that gown, I'll just make it. Well, it's not as simple as, because you can't see inside under the lining what they did. And sometimes the best thing is the ones that are in the worst condition, because you can kind of look inside and see how it's put together. Well, it took me over a year, and I called it the gown from hell. But if you want to see a picture of it, I've got it in my camera, in my cell phone, and it is as close as I could get, because I discovered that when they reproduced the fabric, the original was made on 36-inch panels, 45, whatever. This was 54-inch, so everything was kind of off, was where the things were. Then the next thing was in the printing, it got slightly askewed, so when you tried to get a straight grain, the pen was a little bit wonky. And it went on and on like that. So I finally got it done, and I actually had the lady wore it, got compliments and everything, and then we had pictures taken so I could take it in to Mary and show her gown, because she loved it, and so she could see it. But that's the thing with these clothes, that you get, I like fabric. And,
Where can you get fabric now?
that's the other
That's an
thing.
interesting challenge.
Where do you get your fabric?
It is so hard. This gown I made for Wendy, how many?
2014, maybe?
2014.
Yeah.
I just can't get
Well,
over
maybe
how
even
light
before
this is.
2014.
Yeah, this is blue string, they call it.
Yeah.
So, but this
And
is,
this is
having
actually
a
heavier.
linen like this is very hard.
Yeah, this is a heavier one than some
Anybody
of
wants to
them.
take
Just
anybody else is interested in it.
Oh,
And
my,
so,
yes.
Your star for the finale, half of the finale.
Is he coming?
He's ready.
Okay. So, you can just
Yeah,
pretend
all
that
linen, very
Wendy,
heavy linen. There's a company.
is coming. But here comes the gentleman.
She's selling clothes right now.
Yeah. Well, she's probably more comfortable in what she's in than,
Oh, my goodness.
but here he comes.
Now he looks very dressed up.
So there's the gentleman. And he won't have to keep that on for very long.
Taxation is still tough. But not as much.
Okay, right. So this is called a frock coat. This is, the evolution of this comes from the English, and they go to the country, to their estates and so on. And, I wish I could have borrowed back a riding habit so you could see the ladies. But I have pictures I brought in my book. You can see some of the things. But the frock coat was the civilian gentleman's attire, which sort of filtered down to the everyday person kind of thing, who would wear it, maybe not with the silver plated buttons, but with buttons, but it's it's got pleats at the sides, and these are not nearly as full as the ones that would have been at the time of that everything was, the volume of it is getting narrower, but it's still fairly narrow. And you notice
We're gonna have to put stays on you.
yes, right. You roll it and then you're good. But
Did you sell that one?
I did. So
Did you button it up, or does it
it
have?
could button, or you could put a hook, but generally they were worn open.
This has no functioning button.
Yeah.
No function button.
The original ones were functional, but now you're getting it all just for show. And on the sides where the pleats, they would have been buttoned the whole way down. In the early 1700s, the coats were really wide, and Beth and I, they're getting a little bit narrow, but not very much. So 1756, you got one. This is 1770. By 1790, they have almost nothing in the skirts. It's all in the back. And so you've got the Regency one, which is a double-breasted, and they did have some of the coats. I did one that was for hunting, which was a double-breasted coat, but generally it's just the straight front. I mean, it's not a straight front. It's it goes like this. The ones the earlier time period go straight down. These are starting to curve, and then they just keep going back and back. So by the 1800s, it's a different thing. But Wendy was supposed to be here as the grand finale. If you have any more questions, you've seen him. He's all dressed out as a gentleman. He's got his gloves. He's got his cape. He's got
It's a Q-wig. It is made to look fake. So if I were to take my hat off, you can see the stitching, very overt stitching in the front. But it's necessary to at least portray your stationary life above the river.
How comfortable are those to wear, gentlemen, sir?
I'll get used to it. They're made. This was made for my head, so if I would get hurt, it's not a one size fits all. They're made for the individual.
This one, you can look at this too. Yes, that one's powder. This one went with that down over there for the lady, and so I got all of the stuff back from her, from her husband after she died, and so this is kind of worse for wear, but this is the kind of thing that the ladies, that with the Continental Association really would not have, they wouldn't have approved of this at all, or the feathers, or any of that kind of stuff. So the Republican simplicity meant that you did away with all of that, and their hair was, there was a real rage for what they called, what we call big hair, I guess. But it would reach these enormous, rolls, and they were made of red oxtail, horsehair, and human hair to put this thing on there. And you could see, I'm sure you've seen some of the pictures of them. This is the Marie Antoinette kind of thing, where they got ships up in there and everything. Well, this is the sort of thing that the congressional, the Continental Association was trying to get rid of, because this smacked of all of that same sort of thing. And so ladies were supposed to have, just plain hair. None of this, no powder, no wigs, and you might have just a few. So the gentlemen, still wore wigs sometimes, and I guess the ultra Republican Thomas Jefferson was hardly would have done that.
Well, they were powdered their own.
Yeah, they still kept the powder, but they.
I'm not going to grow a ponytail.
But it's a very, very good thing for the look. So this is what they would look like.
And that type of jacket is still comfortable to ride on a horse, correct?
Yeah.
Because it's got a slit in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bunched up in the back.
Oh, okay.
But it's, I don't think it was.
They were for, the English country squire started these things. I could give you a whole thing on riding habits and the evolution of that, because I did a couple of books and stuff. So, but this is the kind of thing that is through all the levels of society. It may have started there with the English country gentlemen, but it would have been made in something else. Not riding, the riding stuff might have been in linen or wool, mostly wool. But then you get the evolution. With women, with the riding habit, that's an interesting thing too, because it starts out with they're always making them to look like the men's clothing, but they were all made by men, by tailors. You were supposed to, women weren't supposed to make these things. Well, eventually they get around to that. But what happens with the women, they start wearing them beside the same way with this. Instead of just riding, they're comfortable enough that they can wear them to go walking, or they can go for errands, and it becomes like this is sort of the casual suit sort of thing. If you wanted to have a whole suit, you could have all of that in navy, or you could have mix and match. The same way with the riding habit for the women, it became like your casual going shopping kind of thing.
When did they go bomber pants? What one was?
They start with that in the 90s and into the 1800s. But gentlemen of a certain age continued to wear breeches because that's what they were comfortable in.
Madison still wore a wig in the teens.
Yeah. Well, it's just like us, when we get older, we're more comfortable with not necessarily keeping up with the latest style, and then you wear what you're comfortable with. Benjamin Franklin's breeches down at the Smithsonian are really dirty and stained and everything, but he was it was something that he did. I think they are ready. You can drive. All right, so
Well, thank you very much.